the last 3 years, I have supercharged my property portfolio using the B4R model. This has allowed me to buy properties in a way which is much faster and requires a lot less money than the traditional way of investing in property. In this video, I want to talk about my new property investing model I developed called B4R. I started investing in property part-time in 2010 whilst I was working at Ernst & Young as a trainee accountant. I started buying properties the traditional way, whereby I was slowly saving money from my salary, and once I had enough for a deposit, I would buy a property. But this way was slow and tied up a lot of money. I was what you would call the traditional property investor or armchair investor. I was looking to build up a property portfolio part-time whilst working full-time. In my spare time, I would spend quite a bit of time on Rightmove, but I would just keep looking for properties that I thought might make good long-term investments. I started my investment journey in Birmingham. The property prices there were a lot cheaper, and I felt that there was a lot less that could go wrong. I was really worried about the refurbishment costs, as I had no real idea what these were going to cost. So I tended to buy properties that only needed a change of carpets, painting and decorating. I definitely didn't want to do any structural work. I was working full time, and so I didn't have the time to project manage a refurbishment. I didn't want to spend thousands of pounds completing a refurbishment, as it felt more like a cost than an actual investment. By not facing my fears, I was leaving lots of money on the table. By that, I mean I was putting down a 25% deposit, completing minimal cosmetic works, and then not refinancing the property because I felt I hadn't added enough value to justify a mega uplift. As an armchair investor, I was buying properties on a buy-to-let mortgage, changing the carpets and giving the house a paint, and then letting it out. I've been on lots of property training courses, and they always talk about the BRRR model, which is buy, refurbish, rent and refinance. And then they would show these houses which were tired and dated, which had been purchased at a discount and refurbished and then rented out and refinanced to leave little or no money in. When I actually actively started looking for these projects, I really struggled. I was finding it incredibly difficult to find a 3-bedroom house that I could buy at a mega discount that I could refurbish, rent and refinance at the higher valuation. The model in principle seems to work, but I couldn't make it work. In the last 3 years, I have supercharged my property portfolio using the B4R model, where I'm able to buy properties, add a lot of value, and then recycle as much money as possible to use for the deposit on the next property. This has allowed me to buy properties in a way which is much faster and requires a lot less money than the traditional way of investing in property and the way I used to invest. B4R stands for buy, reconfigure, refurbish, rent and refinance. I accidentally came across this model when I purchased a 2-bedroom house in Bedford, which I converted into a 3-bedroom house. I purchased this house completely the wrong way, and in fact I used what I was taught on a course to test their model. I purchased this 2-bedroom house in Bedford for £97,500. My plan was to relocate the bathroom downstairs in order to create an additional bedroom upstairs, therefore creating a 3-bedroom house. When I went to view this property, it was very tired and dated. It was probate, which means that the person living in the property had passed away. The kitchen had a sink and 1 unit opposite. So my first thought was this property is not mortgageable. I was always told that in order for a property to be mortgageable, then it has to be lettable in its current condition. This property was not lettable in its current condition. I mentioned this to the estate agent, and I think he said to anyone else that viewed it after me that it would have to be a cash buy. I made a cash offer, which was subsequently accepted. I spoke with my broker, who after looking at the photos said we could try a buy-to-let mortgage with a free valuation to see if they would lend on the property. And so we did, and the lender came back and said, yes, we are happy to lend. As you can see, the bathroom was actually a good size. It had a full bathroom suite, a water tank, and also storage. Once all this was removed, the bedroom was very similar size to the 2nd bedroom. One of the issues with the existing bathroom layout was the design, and that was because the bathroom had been installed underneath the sloping roof, so you actually couldn't stand in the bath to shower. The utility room of the kitchen was a good size and had enough space for a bathtub, toilet and sink. The after floor plans is an example of a property I'd seen that had 3 bedrooms upstairs and the bathroom downstairs. As mentioned before, in this area it wasn't uncommon to have the bathroom downstairs, so I felt by adding a bedroom I would be adding a significant amount of value to this property over and above just doing a straightforward refurbishment in its existing configuration. I found this apartment on Rightmove, and what attracted me to this was the lovely pictures. The house looked tired and dated with lots of dated furniture and wasn't in the best of conditions. It had the trademark olive bathroom suite. I purchased this apartment on a buy-to-let mortgage with no early redemption penalty. Completed the works to the property to create the uplift, and then after 6 months remortgaged onto another buy-to-let mortgage. I now realise that wasn't the best way to fund this purchase, and I should have used bridging finance and then refinanced onto a buy-to-let mortgage. But at the time my broker said there was no issue in buying the property on a buy-to-let mortgage, but really this wasn't the correct way to purchase this property. I refinanced this property onto another buy-to-let mortgage, having held the property for 6 months. I ended up with a property worth £160,000 for nothing. The purchase price was £97,500, there was no stamp duty, the legal fees were £1,500, the refurbishment costs were £19,750, resulting in total costs of £118,750. When I refinanced the property onto a buy-to-let mortgage, the value as a 3-bedroom house came in at £160,000. The buy-to-let advance was £120,000, which meant that the money left in this particular project was zero, and the return on investment was infinite. This was my first B4R project, and since then I only look for projects where I can implement the B4R model. I wanted to invest in central London, but again I couldn't see how this was possible without tying up a lot of money this time. I first started off looking for the cheapest flats in central London, and these tended to be the high-rise, non-standard construction apartments. Having viewed quite a few of these properties, I soon realised some of the issues that I would face. Buy-to-let lenders did not like these high-rise ex-council properties, so the loan to value would have been reduced and the interest rate would have been higher. Buy-to-let lenders also wanted to see at least 50-50 ownership between the ex-council owners and private owners. In these types of flats, they were predominantly owned by council tenants. The private flats tended to be owned by cash buyers or investors, and due to the desirability from lenders, it felt like if I ever wanted to sell this type of apartment, I would be restricted to selling it to an investor who might negotiate harder on the price. More recently, the issue of cladding since Grenfell has made it even harder to secure lending on these types of properties, as lenders will want to see an EWS1 form. I decided against buying these types of apartments as they seemed more suited to cash buyers looking for a good yield, and they were not suitable for me because I was concerned about the exit, obtaining the refinance onto a buy-to-let mortgage. The next thing I looked at was the private flats in central London. Private flats purchased at a discount. The issue I found with buying apartments cheap was that I would have struggled to justify the uplift when remortgaging onto a buy-to-let mortgage. Even if I completed a refurbishment, the value add would have been minimal, and I was told by my broker that lenders don't like to see you buying cheap properties and then going for a higher valuation after 6 months with little or minimal works completed. In terms of these flats, I realised it would be difficult to add a significant amount of value through a simple refurbishment, and therefore I needed to keep looking for projects where I could add a significant amount of value, undertake a full refurbishment, and also find another way to add even more uplift and value. I started looking at private garden flats where I could do a side return and a back extension into, say, from a 1-bedroom apartment into a 2-bedroom apartment, or even 3-bedroom apartment. If you have a look at the floor plan in this example, I could have turned this 1-bedroom flat into a 3-bedroom flat. I could have created a courtyard behind where the current toilet is and completed a side return and back extension to create a 3-bedroom apartment. When I came across this value-adding strategy, I was really excited and thought I could go and do as many properties as I could find. But then I realised the following. Flats do not come with permitted development rights, therefore I would need full planning permission. I found that most vendors in central London did not want to sell subject to contract. These types of properties were highly desirable because of the outdoor space and therefore difficult to negotiate a discount on, let alone subject to planning. bridging lenders would restrict their lending to 50% of loan to value if no planning was in place, as there was obviously a risk that if I didn't manage to secure planning, then I would be left with a 1-bedroom apartment at best. A lot of potential upfront abortive costs. I decided not to pursue this strategy as to scale it would have been difficult. There were lots of potential abortive costs if the vendor decided to pull out for whatever reason, or if planning was not granted. The refurbishment costs would have been a lot more for each project given the level of structural works involved. Refinancing this type of project might have been difficult due to the interest coverage ratio, i.e. this would have added a significant amount of value to the property, i.e. it would not be 3 times the rent of a 1-bedroom apartment. These tend to work better as flips, buy and sell projects. I then started looking for 1-bedroom apartments that had a separate kitchen so that I could move the kitchen into the living room to create an open plan kitchen diner and change the existing bedroom into a kitchen. During my research, I actually developed a checklist of items I was looking for to help me, including low-rise ex-council block, no more than 5 floors in the block, a mixture of private and council tenants, within 10 to 15 minutes walk of an underground station, 1-bedroom apartments with a separate kitchen. Kitchen had to be at least 8 square meters, the living room had to be at least 15 square meters. Consent was likely to be granted for the works that I was going to propose. It could be ex-council or private as long as they ticked my criteria above. Positives. Adding a bedroom allowed me to add a significant amount of value. Full refurbishment with internal reconfiguration. No structural works to take place. Consent felt easier than getting planning permission. No planning permission required. The 2-bedroom apartment would be valued by a surveyor looking at comparable 2-bedroom apartments. I could buy on a bridge, refinance onto a buy-to-let mortgage after 6 months of ownership. This strategy seemed a lot more scalable, lower risk. No structural works, no planning permission needed, no need to purchase subject to planning. I suddenly felt akin to a cash buyer who were able to exchange and complete quickly. Plenty of 1-bedroom apartments that met the above criteria, and there were lots of 2-bedroom comparable apartments out there to bed down the end value. Negatives. There is money left in, but that's not uncommon in central London. If you view this as a long-term investment and make sure your ROI is good, then this offsets this particular downside. You will have to travel to London. I'm sure this strategy can work in any major city. As you can see, I invested some time upfront to see which property type I wanted to invest in, looking at my risk appetite and scalability. I didn't want to complete just one project, but multiple projects at the same time. Since I developed this checklist, I've gone on to complete a number of these projects in central London. For example, I purchased this 1-bedroom apartment in Vauxhall for £290,000, and my plan was to use the B4R model to supercharge its value. I found this apartment listed on Rightmove and the floor plan had everything in my criteria checklist. When I went to view the apartment, it was literally 5 minutes walk from Vauxhall Underground Station. When I went to see the apartment was tenanted, but I was told that the landlord had given the tenants notice and they would be moving out soon. As I walked into the apartment, there was a toilet on the left-hand side and no sink. There was a bathroom on the right-hand side with a sink but no toilet in it. Directly ahead was the first bedroom, which was a good size. Then I walked into the living room, and again this was a good size. It was nearly 15 square meters. I wandered into the kitchen, which was just off the living room, and it was very tight and dated, but it was 8.1 square meters. I could see that the apartment ticked all my boxes in relation to the criteria I had in place, and so I offered on the property. The works took about 6 weeks, and my builder also managed to add a shower to the main bedroom, add a toilet to the main bathroom. So this apartment went from being a 1-bedroom apartment to being a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment. Let me show you what the apartment looked like once I applied the B4R model. The first photo you are seeing is of the open plan kitchen dining area. The second photo shows the kitchen. The next photo shows the main bedroom, where we also managed to squeeze in a shower and sink. This space originally used to be a deep wardrobe. The next photo shows the kitchen we converted into a bedroom. We managed to get a wardrobe in there and also had space for another storage area. This photo shows the main bedroom, which we put in a toilet, removed the bath, so that we could put in a shower. This photo shows the new toilet with a sink. I used an interior designer to make sure I was using the space in the best possible way I could. Let me show you how the numbers worked in relation to this project and how I ended up with a 2-bedroom apartment which only cost me £36,000. The purchase price was £290,000, the refurb costs were £23,000, the bridging costs were £13,322, the stamp duty was £13,200, the legal and other fees were £3,882, and the furniture costs were £4,597. Total costs were £348,003. The valuation of the apartment came back at £390,000 after 6 months of ownership, at which point we got an 80% loan to value mortgage on it, which we were advanced £312,101, which meant the money left in on this particular apartment was £35,902. This apartment in central London literally cost me less than £36,000. The real increase in value in relation to this apartment was created by going from a 1-bedroom apartment to a 2-bed, 2-bath apartment. If I had bought this apartment the traditional way, I would have put down a 25% deposit, paid the stamp duty and legal fees, and also I would have been in for £125,000. The B4R model has allowed me to buy nearly 3 times the number of apartments when compared to the traditional way of investing and the way I used to invest. Using the B4R model, I've converted a house into 2 flats, and I'm in the process of converting a mixed-use commercial building into 4 flats. I read this quote which really demonstrated how I came across the B4R model, which goes something like this: "There are no mistakes, only lessons. Growth is a process of trial and error."